My name is Diane Kaufman. I'm 66 years old. I want to tell you something that took me an embarrassingly long time to understand. I'll tell it the way it actually happened, because there's a version of this story where I look good, but that's not the one I'm telling today. I was getting dressed for what I thought was a business dinner. I put on the blazer, the one that makes me feel like I'm in charge. I looked in the mirror, adjusted my hair, and then I realized something that stopped me cold. The dinner was 3 weeks ago. I'd written it in the wrong week of my calendar. I stood in my bedroom in that blazer for 10 minutes, just standing there, looking at a woman who had nowhere to be. And I understood in that moment what transition actually means. It isn't a date you circle on a calendar when you sell the company or file the final paperwork. It's a Tuesday morning when you're overdressed for absolutely nothing. If you've spent your life building things, careers, businesses, reputations, you know that retirement isn't just about the money. We talk about savings and fixed income, but we don't talk about the identity crisis that happens when the work stops. I had the financial structure right. The calendar cleared on schedule. What I didn't account for was who I was supposed to be without the work. I'm not going to give you a 5-step system or a roadmap to fix your life. I'm just going to tell you what happened to me and what we figured out. Because retirement, especially the kind where you haven't prepared your heart as well as your bank account, is a trap. My husband noticed it before I did. He retired a few years before I did. He figured it out in about 6 weeks, which I watched from across the room with a mix of confusion and great irritation. He was just fine. One evening he looked at me and said, very carefully, "You're not bored, you're lost. Those aren't the same thing." I didn't speak to him for 2 hours after that. Then I came back and told him he was right. I realized I had spent 30 years being the person people went to for answers. I ran a service business. I started small, just me and an assistant, and eventually I had 12 people counting on me. It was unglamorous and it worked. But when I sold that business and moved into consulting and real estate, I was still the person. I was the fixer. Then, suddenly, there was nothing to fix but the silence in my own house. So, I want to go through some things I've noticed, things I wish I'd known before I found myself standing in a blazer in an empty room. The first thing is the myth of the endless Saturday. We're told retirement is this long stretch of leisure, travel, finally relaxing. And for the first 6 months after I stepped back, it was lovely. We travelled, we got away, we checked things off the list. It felt like a holiday. But then the winter came. Not just the season, but the internal winter. The honeymoon ended, and I realized that no work often feels like no purpose. If every day is Saturday, then Saturday isn't special anymore. It's just another day where nobody is calling you to ask for your perspective. You have to understand the cost of letting go. Everyone talks about building. Nobody talks about what it's like to hand your life's work to someone else and watch them do it differently. It isn't grief exactly. It's just quiet, like standing in a room after a party has ended and realizing the room doesn't belong to you anymore. That's the trap. If you don't have something to retire to, you're just running from something. My father was an accountant, precise, careful, a very quiet man. When he retired, he didn't just stop. He had a plan for his brain. I, on the other hand, thought I could just be. I was wrong. I sat around for far too long, and it wasn't good for me. I've earned the right to not know every answer, but I haven't earned the right to stop using my mind. That leads me to the second thing. Your marriage changes when the work stops. I thought my husband and I would just suddenly have all this blissful time together. But he had built a life for himself while I was still busy. He had his routines, his quiet moments. I couldn't just barge into his retirement and expect him to be my full-time audience. We had to learn how to be two people who are here, rather than two people who are busy. That's a different project entirely. He's a steady man. He always knew exactly who he was, which used to frustrate me when I was the boss at work. Now I consider it one of his best qualities. He teases me gently about my need to manage, and I let him, most of the time. You also lose the work friends. If you were the boss, those people move on. They have new problems and a new person to impress. I'm not being cynical, it's just the way of things. You have to be prepared for the phone to stop ringing with people who need you. Third, you have to get comfortable with your own company. I started taking what I call solo adventures. I'd go to a gallery or just walk. I didn't announce where I was going. I just went. It's a discipline, learning to be alone without feeling lonely. My mother was elegant without effort, even when she had very little. She had this composure that didn't rely on a crowded room. I've had to work much harder to find that same peace. Being self-made often means you are very good at doing things for other people or for the business. It doesn't necessarily mean you are good at doing things just for yourself. I had to learn what I liked when there was no ROI attached to it. Finally, you have to be willing to start over. I don't give business advice anymore, but I do give perspective. I started this channel because younger women like my daughter, kept asking me questions at dinners. She is building her own thing now, and she's occasionally exhausted. She's more like me than either of us would admit. I realized you can't answer the deep questions about life and ambition in a 5-minute dinner conversation. I'm not going to pretend I've figured it all out. Some days I feel like I'm moving forward, and some days I'm just standing still while looking forward. And that's okay. The money is real, and I won't pretend otherwise. I live well, and I don't apologize for it. But there's a version of yourself you think you'll become when you finally have enough. And then you have enough, and you're still just yourself. That was the most useful disappointment of my life. The problems look different in a nicer setting, but they're still the same problems. Retirement is about finding out what the rest of you is for once the title is gone. If something in here landed for you, leave a comment. Tell me how you're handling the transition, or what surprised you the most when the work stopped. I read them and I find them more useful than I expected to. I'll do a follow-up on this. Subscribe if you want to see it. All right, I'll let you go. Take care of yourself.